Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have number one, Telegram CEO Pavel Durov arrested in France. Justin Sun proposes DAO and pledges $1 million to assist the release. The TON token is down almost 20% on the week. Number two, ETH Foundation reveal $100 million a year budget to some fury over lack of transparency. And some memes are up very big. Cat up 50%, FWOG up 58%, Redo up 150%. We're going to talk about all of that and more. We've got the price action on crypto and NFTs and some discussion on the top traders' advice on how to survive and keep winning in the space too. Stay tuned for that. Today we have Legendary in the co-host seat, and we've got special guest with us today. We've got Austin, community lead at the SEIng network, our sponsor for today's show. Can't wait to get into our special segment for today with Austin as well. And we are in general ready to get into it. But before we do, just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. And we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Austin, welcome to the stage with us, my friend. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you guys for inviting me. Thank you guys for having me today. Really excited for this episode. So yeah, let's go.
I'm glad you're with us, man. Legendary, how are you doing? We've got a couple of vacationers at the moment. Both of you are away from your usual spots. How's your trip going so far?
Jim from London, that is. Pretty good. Got a new mobile setup with a new mobile mic with the iPad as a second screen, so you can still do all the screen sharing and everything. That's been going good. And I've been thinking when I created the thumbnail for today's show for YouTube, which is the Telegram CEO behind bars, Grok created that image, without any kind of hesitation. Whereas if you would try to do that with ChatGPT or Midjourney, it would like, nope, that's against our policies. We're not going to do that. And it kind of also, is part of that conversation around freedom of speech, freedom of AI usage and image generation. I feel like it's going to become an even more conversation in the future. So I'm pretty excited to get into the day's news in a bit.
Very, very interesting. I've definitely found it quite difficult when I've been using ChatGPT and I'm doing the image generator to try to make it do. I remember actually I was trying to get it to do Pac Moon. I was trying to get a Lamborghini covered in the Pac Moon brand because I was trying to do a tweet about Pac Moon and whatever. But it's just like, it wouldn't do it. It just refused to take the image that I gave it and replicate it perfectly, I guess, because it knows it's not allowed to copy it in some way. But interesting to know that Grok just goes and does its own thing. Austin, have you experimented with any of the AI stuff in your role as head of community, or just personally kind of on Twitter? Are you using it much? Are you leveraging it much at all?
So yeah, I use basically ChatGPT for just like a lot of stuff, like kind of like my personal assistant. Like
you've become
if
friends.
I
friends with
like 100%.
ChatGPT.
Like if I have a question or anything, I just like ask ChatGPT first instead of like just Googling the answer and spending like minutes on trying to find the right answer. I haven't used it that much in terms of like images and creating that type of stuff. I used it for some memes, but not branded memes. So I haven't had that issue with the brands and everything.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So would you describe your relationship with ChatGPT as professional, or is it now personal as well?
No, I think it's probably more professional than just like, you have to become friends with ChatGPT and like the AI for them to give you the right answer. That'd be my advice there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always very, very polite. I always say please, and I always say thank you to the AI after I've spoken with it, just to be safe. But look, as Legendary said, like some of this AI stuff, some of the freedom of speech stuff, freedom of expression is all kind of intertwined. And so we've got all kinds of pretty interesting takes and thoughts on what I think was a pretty big weekend of news. So looking forward to bring that all to you in just a moment. Let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have Bitcoin pretty much flat in the past 24 hours, just under 64K. We've got ETH also flat around 2.7K. Solana is up a few percent at $161. Getting into the headlines from the snapshot, which is pinned up top if you're listening on Twitter. Number one, Telegram CEO Pavel Durov is arrested in France. Justin Sun's proposed a DAO to pledge $1 million to assist the release. The TON token is down almost 20% on the week. A couple of comments from some prominent people. Lex Friedman said the arrest of Pavel Durov is a disturbing attack on free speech and a threat not just to Telegram, but to any online platform. Governments should not engage in censorship. This is a blatant and deeply troubling overreach of power. We've got other people's takes on that as we dive into that story a little bit more. That's clearly the big one over the weekend. Number two, ETH Foundation revealed $100 million a year budget to some fury over lack of transparency. They said that this is part of their treasury management activities. They have a budget of around $100 million a year, which is largely made up of grants and salaries. And some of the recipients are only able to accept fiat. Most people just said it's fine if you have this amount of money, just be transparent and tell us before, rather than getting everyone scared by watching on-chain transactions. But we'll get into that a little bit more as well, because some interesting comparisons with what's going on other chains. And then finally, memes are up pretty big. Cat coin, which we spoke about, Simon's Cat last week, is up 50%. Frog is up 58%. Redo is also up 150%. We'll touch on that briefly as well. Some notable sales from around the space. Xcopy the Doom sold for 21 ETH. Xcopy Deathless sold for 40 ETH. And there was another big Xcopy sale. I believe it was between 20 and 40 ETH. So the Xcopy kind of more classic editions really heating up. That's everything from the price action and the headlines perspective. Legendary, if we go to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, what are you seeing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar to the majors over the last 24 hours. The big JPEG collections on ETH mainnet, pretty flat. Bored Apes at a 13.9 ETH floor, just down 0.15%. Pudgy's up a bit more than 1%, very close to that 11 ETH floor, sitting at 10.95. Mutants and Little Pudgies both up between 2 and 3%, with the floor prices for Mutants at 2.2 and for Little Pudgies at 0.9 ETH. And Miletis are down a touch to a 3.8 ETH floor. Azuki's are also down a bit more than 8% at a 4.76 ETH floor. In terms of the big movers of the weekend, it's definitely a collection that I feel like we haven't spoken about in ages. The Throttle Gremlins, they're up 43% over the last 24 hours with a 24-hour volume of 20 ETH and at a 0.88 ETH floor price. And if you look a bit further, they are also up massively over the last 7 days, up 60%. However, the majority of that move has happened in the last 24 hours.
Interesting. Fantastic breakdown of what's going on the NFT market side. Thanks for that, Legendary. One comment and a question for me. I actually started doing some lending again over the weekend because, as people know, I look very closely at the NFT lending rates. I think it's a great way to put your ETH to work in a relatively, nothing's ever risk-free, but it's a relatively risk-adjusted way to put your ETH to work. And the Pudgy Penguin loans at around 50% loan to value was yielding around 9% or something like that, which I thought was pretty good because for a period of time, they got really low. Like people were willing to lend against them at like 5-6%, which still better than just staking your ETH. But I was like, is it really worth it? I thought as it pushes towards 10, I thought that was pretty good. But question for you, Legendary, is there anything that you're like, how are you putting your ETH to work these days? Like, is there anything that you're specifically doing? I definitely went through a period where I was like, I don't know what to do at the moment. It feels like a bit of a quieter time. How are you thinking about that? And then Austin, I don't know if you have anything on that. Maybe we'll come to you after.
Yeah, how I'm putting my ETH to work. In terms of JPEGs, I don't really do lending right now because I would say my main things are either gaming assets that are staked either way to do something or farm something, or and Pudgies. And for the Pudgies, I just don't want to lend and borrow because I am too paranoid to miss out on any potential snapshot, token, airdrop, whatever. And I know that each platform handles that different. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to miss out on that. In terms of my stables, a good amount of them still put to work on Blast, and the ETH is either in restaking protocols or it is in one of the platforms where you can basically kind of trade airdrop points for APY, and I'm trying to get APY on that end. I would
Like
say
Pendle.
that. Say it again.
On Pendle?
Mostly on Pendle, yeah. Mostly on Pendle. I would say that still the majority of my ETH is working right now. You know me,
Okay.
I don't like to have idle capital. And then
Yeah.
a good amount is still locked in YOLO, where I'm basically have transitioned from a gambler to be the house and provide liquidity and just make money off other people's losses instead of farming Blast tokens by keeping the gambling volume up. So
I see.
active across different segments, but I would say a pretty even split with not a very heavy focus on something that I think is like super outstanding at the moment. And I want to have all my capital in that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, to be honest, I think it's quite healthy to have a reasonable split. Like even the time when I was very bullish on Blast, I didn't like it. I don't think it went all into Blast. I think it might have been a third into Blast, maybe a third in restaking. It might even be smaller than that, maybe like a quarter in each or something like that. Because just purely from a risk management perspective, even if you like something a lot, I think it's difficult to go literally all in with your ETH purely from a smart contract risk perspective. Austin, what about you? What's kind of catching your attention at the moment, whether it's something DeFi related, financial, how you're putting your ETH to work, or maybe on the NFT side? What's kind of on your mind?
So I have to be completely honest here. I don't do any DeFi right now. I just I don't know, I just basically prefer to have my capital available for any like opportunity that
Yeah.
might comes in, you know? Like there's a lot going on in the ecosystem right now. So I just basically prefer, like, I know that that's a bit risky because like jumping on like any opportunity that's coming up, it's kind of like risky nowadays.
Sure.
But that's kind of like how I view it. Like you have to take risks in order
Yeah.
to just like make some gains. So that's my approach, you know, like and
Stay
I'm also
liquid,
like,
basically.
yeah, like, and I'm also like, I just consider myself a degen, you know, like I'm always like, of course, like I work in community, but I also like part of like all these different communities, and I just like really like to like try to find this new thing that will come up, like this new narrative that people will follow, and like just like I just like to stay in the trenches, you know.
So
So
you're not looking for like the 9% yield. You're looking for the
not
100
really. Like
to
I'm just
1000%
like,
gain.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I know that that's more like a risky way of viewing it, but like that's my approach.
Look, to be completely fair, like I think that's kind of what I was saying the other day, where there's got to be a proportion of your capital. This is when I finally capitulated on meme coins, and said, by capitulating, I mean saying that like I was going to get involved, because for a long period of time I was like, you know, this is clearly at the further end of the risk curve. I don't necessarily need to participate in that, and might not want to. Then I was like, this is where the huge liquidity is. I feel like you got to take a proportion of your capital, whether that's all of it, depending on what kind of risk profile you want, or whether that's just like at least a portion to participate and try to be a part of that main liquidity bubble. So I see what you mean. I hear what you're saying for sure. But look, we're going to be getting into some meme coin stuff a little bit later, because there was some big movement a little bit more. Before we get into today's segment, kind of talking about this trading perspective, we said we were going to touch on this trader's advice on how to keep making it, or how to make it. I've got this tweet to share. Legendary, I'd love your perspective on it now that you've been around for a couple of cycles. It's this tweet where it says, most people who made and kept a lot of money in crypto, and maybe to Austin's point, maybe this is why you get a little bit more cautious the longer you've been in the space, because you're trying to balance making it versus keeping hold of it. But he says most people who made it and kept a lot of money in crypto simply survived and stuck around long enough to hit a few big wins: a specific coin, trend, meta, rotation, liquidation cascade, new launch, ARB, news event, and so on. It doesn't take much. In order to survive and be there for those opportunities, your priorities are, and he gives 3 particular things to keep in mind. Number 1, reduce existential risk. Cross margin, gambling without stop, all in on a single coin or position, all funds on a singular exchange. We're kind of just talking about being all in on one thing, all funds on a single hot wallet, and so on. Number 2, reduce the size of your biggest losing trades. Your trade history should be composed of small losses, break evens, small wins, and big wins, never big losses. I've actually been thinking about that a lot as it comes to lending recently, because you've got to make sure that you, with the way the lending works, you can't, because of the way blend works, you only get paid at the end. So if you make a huge loss, not only do you not even make the gain, like you literally just lose everything. And then finally, this is more nuanced, but generally means you're not adding to losing trades without a plan, not exceeding your maximum position size or risk per trade, not over leveraging, not over trading. Many small losses quickly become a big loss. There's no mystery here. 99% of the time, you know when you're trading like an ass. Legendary. What are your thoughts on these 3 bits of advice? How do they feed into some of the stuff you're doing now that you're in your kind of 2nd or 3rd cycle, I think it is, and just kind of checking your risk positioning?
Yeah, couldn't agree more with them. Reducing existential risk, absolutely. I still to this day don't understand how people have managed to lose all of their net worth in the FTX crash or in Luna Terra crashing. This absolutely should not happen to anyone. The other point, if you can bring the tweet up really quick again, because I wanted to reference something specific
Sure.
from that. Currently loading. Reducing the size of your biggest losing trades. So the trade history should consider small losses, break even, small wins, and big wins. I think that's a very good point, and a lot of people, they kind of forget the math of that. And I am very very prone to that myself. That I rather wait for something that's down to recover, whether it's JPEG or another asset. But in essence, if something dumps 33%, it needs to increase 50% to go back to where it usually was. And if it dumped 33% and it doubles up from there, you're only up 30% from your original position. So, I tended, with gaming assets, with NFTs, to be like, nah, let's wait for that to recover. And I sell at a smaller loss. And like that, if it's not your strongest hypothesis, you shouldn't do that. Like, rather take a small loss instead of risking run into a bigger loss. It's not only because of the numbers, but more so because of the attention span and time that goes into that. If you have a significant position in something that's down and you keep monitoring that, because again, if it's a high conviction long-term play and you say, I don't know, you bought Pudgies at 12 ETH and they're down to 10 or whatever, and you're like, nah, I'm waiting for the token, I think they're going to dominate in 2 years, then don't care about that. But if it's like a more short to midterm trade, and you then invest so much time and attention to track that, that's definitely not worth it. And generally, the sentiment to survive is one part of that, but you also have to like keep educating yourself and learn about new things. Remember this one trade from Easy where he talked about the Luna crash, and that was actually the first time he was shorting something with size, which he didn't dare to do like when he started or in his first cycle, and that he learned more and had the experience. He then wanted to do that. It's something the two of us, Pichek, we spoke about, that you might get more comfortable with shorting something or watch a couple of assets to do. So and you definitely have to like keep learning and try to use like the full stack of things that you can do, whether that's DeFi shorting, other strategies. So when there's an opportunity, and as Austin said, you need to absolutely, that's probably the most important point, you need to have capital available or instantly liquid. Like I can exit my Pendle staking positions, whatever, they're all liquid. If I need money, I can do something with it, because otherwise you will be one of these people posting on X, oh, if you bought CryptoPunks yesterday on the dip or had a leverage put on that, you could have made 100 ETH with just 10 ETH or whatever. So you need to absolutely have capital available, because things will be mispriced. You will have expertise in something, and you will be able to seize that opportunity only if you have money, because typically those windows of opportunity in crypto tend to be a couple minutes to a couple hours long, and then you need to just be liquid for that.
Yeah, I like it. I like that perspective. It's definitely something you mentioned. The shorting stuff typically is not something I would do. It's funny when I've spoken about it with other people as well. People have a very negative reaction to find out that you might be considering shorting something because it's perceived as like really negative. And I actually do agree that optimists are the people who make money in general. Like you got to believe in something, and in general, lots of these assets just over time just go up and to the right, right? Like obviously not all of them, but in order to really make the big money, I think you just buy and hold. Having said that, as you said, like in my first cycle, I was not in a position to short Luna, for example. Like I wasn't sophisticated enough, didn't understand the mechanics enough, didn't understand DeFi enough. Whereas I read this really interesting thing the other day that was saying like, look, start making a list. Like we're not in a bear market, are we? So like we're halfway through a bull. Everything is, or we're somewhere along a cycle of a bull. Bitcoin's almost at its all-time high. Things will start to get inflated, and certain things will be worth certain valuations that they're not worth. As we either get further into it, or maybe we're even there already sometimes. Like start making your list of things that you think are inflated and where you think the bubble might pop. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do when you're kind of trying to navigate the space and take advantage of a opportunity that you see coming down the line. That's pretty interesting perspective. Look, we definitely want to get into the headlines and stuff in just a little bit. We've got big news to bring to you, but let's get into today's segment first. In this week's segment of What Are They Saying, we hit the main quotes and trending ideas from the weekend to get some hot takes. This segment is brought to you by the SEIng network, a super fast L1 parallelizing the EVM. They're offering a $250,000 matching pool to support creators contributing to SEI with IRL video content, podcast hosting, video and animations, and storytelling. So this is quote number one from Balaji on Telegram, CEO Pavel Durov's arrest in France. He said, Macron wanted founders to build in France, but why would you build in France? Why would you even visit France? Build an app and go to jail. The question for you today, guys, one sentence or one word answers. With freedom of expression seemingly under attack, where in the world do you go right now if you want to build in crypto or media? Legendary.
Easy one. Switzerland. Strong democracy, very crypto friendly.
Always neutral. Austin, where do you go?
Yeah, maybe I'm biased on this, but I'd go to Argentina.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Quote number two from Udi regarding ETH Foundation's $100 million annual budget. He said, laser eyes trolling the Ethereum Foundation for spending $100 million are morons. The Ethereum Foundation holds less than 0.3% of ETH supply and spends $100 million a year to improve Ethereum. MicroStrategy holds more than 1% of Bitcoin supply and proudly spends nothing to improve Bitcoin. Your question, Legendary, is $100 million a reasonable annual budget for the Ethereum Foundation? Should MicroStrategy do more to fund building on Bitcoin?
If stake.com as a gambling platform can spend 100 mil on Drake, then certainly the ETH Foundation can have a total budget of 100 mil. And yes, it would be cool to see MicroStrategy actually contribute to the BTC development.
Good comparison. Austin, what do you think?
I think that it is reasonable if they're being like completely transparent with their funds, like that's okay. And I agree with Legendary there. I think that it'd be cool to see MicroStrategy just like doing something for BTC as well.
Something more. Got it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Next question. From a digital art perspective, are you an Xcopy buyer here? If not, who else? So from Roto reporting on 4 Xcopy editions being sold between 20 and 40 ETH each in the last 24 hours. Your question is, from a digital art perspective, are you an Xcopy buyer here? If not, who else do you like? Austin first.
I'm not an Xcopy buyer, and I'm looking for some cool art to buy actually, but I've been not buying any digital art lately.
No digital art, purely in the degen trenches.
Purely into like collectibles and stuff. Yeah.
Legendary. What's your take?
Lost 6 figures on digital art, so not an Xcopy buyer. Lucanet said the greatest gen art collection is the Pudgy rods, so I'm gonna go buy Pudgy rods.
Okay, got the Pudgy rods is now high class generative art. Love to hear it. And final quote: the SEI Creator Fund Round 2, our sponsor for today, has attracted $35,000 worth of donations so far from 8,600 donors, with 250K in the matching pool. Your question, Austin, how much higher than 35K will the total donations go? What's your prediction in the last 4 days that it's open? How many total donors will there be?
To be completely honest, I don't know, but hopefully we can get to like 10K donors, like 10,000 people donating. That'd be amazing to see. It's like 3 times more, like 4 times more than the first round. So
Interesting. Okay,
yeah,
so you're kind of comparing it to the first round. Legendary, throw out some numbers. How high do you want it to go?
I'm gonna just say the higher number, 15K.
15K unique donors. Awesome stuff.
Yep.
That was the round for today. Austin, in general, the Creator Fund, as you said, we kind of gave some numbers about this round so far, but you mentioned this round versus the previous round. Do you want to just give some numbers about how much better in general this round has been going versus the first time you did it?
yeah, for sure. So I think that for the first round, the topic and like the eligibility criteria was much more like broad. So like right now, just being the topic like creative media and IP development, I think that it attracted more new projects applicating. So compared to like the first round, in the first round we had 63 projects approved,
Nice.
and in this one we had 100 and no, yeah, 183, I think,
Nice.
and over 230 projects applying. So yeah, and like compared to the donations, I don't have the exact number for the first round, but like seeing like over 8,000 people just like donating and like just participating on this, it's just like amazing to see because it's like composed by like two pillars, right? Like you have the creators, but you also have to have the community voting and participating if you want to have like a healthy round. So yeah, that's really good to see.
That's pretty awesome, man. I think you guys have crushed it. Even like the way that you kind of reached out to us, and I know you've reached out to other prominent creators, and frankly, everyone's just kind of been really supportive of each other in general. Like the creators amongst themselves have kind of been reaching out to each other, catching up, jumping on calls with each other. I've kind of really enjoyed that process. So awesome work by you guys. Appreciate you for joining us today and telling us about that. But look, we're going to keep going. We've got the big headlines to bring you today. Got to get to the Telegram CEO arrest story because it's big news, not just for crypto. I don't think, like generally big world news and with kind of crypto implications, but more broad implications too. So let's get into the kind of what exactly happened to get you up to speed there. I'm going to share my screen for the people who are watching in. Remember, we're live on X video. We're live on YouTube as well if you're watching in. The headline was obviously Pavel Durov has nothing to hide, the Telegram team say after the founder's arrest in France. Just some key details. The billionaire founder of the encrypted messaging app was detained after his private jet landed in France on the outskirts of Paris on Saturday. He actually became a French citizen in 2021, so he was the subject of a search warrant. Both outlets that reported on this suggest the investigation was focused on a lack of moderators on Telegram and potential criminal activity by users. They said the warrant alleges his platform has been used for money laundering, drug trafficking, and other offenses though French authorities are yet to comment. Telegram said in a statement yesterday they abide by EU laws, including the Digital Services Act. Its moderation is within industry standards and constantly improving. Some commentary on this, I think we provided already. Lex Friedman said the arrest of Pavel Durov is a disturbing attack on free speech and a threat not just to Telegram, but to any online platform. Government should not engage in censorship. This is a blatant and deeply troubling overreach of power. A couple more bits before I go to you, Legendary and Austin. It kind of reminded me when I was reading this news, when they used the words something like the platform has been used for money laundering, drug trafficking, and other offenses. It reminded me very much of like the Tornado Cash language, where that application, which is a kind of privacy preserving currency mixer, they say this platform is being used for X, Y, and Z, and therefore the app itself is not allowed or illegal in some way. Balaji actually wrote this quite condemning piece. I want to hear people's perspectives on this in just a little bit. He said France is for crime, against freedom. He kind of suggested that it's basically impossible to be held responsible for things which happen in your jurisdiction, whether that's digital or actually physical. One of the examples he gave in this piece was where he said, where was this? He said something like, is Macron held personally responsible for every beheading, rape, and robbery that occurs on French soil? Is he jailed when traveling for violating the human rights of French citizens by not moderating his community hard enough? No, he is not, even though the tools of the French state are vastly greater than those of Telegram over a vastly smaller user base. Again, Macron has 70 million citizens to deal with, while Telegram has almost 1 billion users. Remember, the reported numbers are around 900 million, I think, for Telegram at the moment. So this is the kind of way that at least tech optimists are framing this, kind of suggesting that applications themselves should not be prosecuted for the crimes that are done using them as a tool. The tool itself is not the crime. The human action with the tool is the crime. That would be the way I frame it. I'm going to stop there, Legendary. We've got some more takes on it, but I want to come to you straight away to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple thoughts and a bit more color on the entire story. Telegram also said in their statement exactly what you just read, that it's absurd to claim that the platform or its owner are responsible for abuse of that platform. You said perfectly. Everything that has to do with privacy, that just governments don't like that. And I feel like to some extent we're weaponizing, or governments are weaponizing privacy on the one hand, to fight against blockchain, to fight against mixers. The Silk Road founder is serving 2 life sentences. On the other hand, then we use the GDPR, the data protection, as another way to fight against the things that we don't like. There's been this story coming out actually 2 hours ago that Uber has been fined $324 million for alleged inadequate protection of drivers' data under the GDPR in Europe, in the Netherlands. So we are using on privacy on the one hand to fight the corporates that we don't like by claiming that they are not protecting data enough. But then on the other hand, when you have privacy-focused applications, they get under scrutiny pretty quickly, and it's like I can understand where the government is coming from and that they obviously don't want that. But as you said, I think like privacy is very important, and ultimately it's a tool, it's a communication platform, and it's not the action that results from that. Like terrorists would organize on other platforms as they have done before. It's kind of reminds me of the discussion that's going around in the German media right now after the terrorist attack in Solingen on Friday, where a terrorist knifed down I don't know how many people, killed a few people as well. And now the German government is discussing that basically you're only allowed to carry a knife with half the blade length than you used to be able to carry. So to go from 12 centimeters, which is 5 inches, to like 2.5 inches in public, which is not solving the problem at hand. So like those seem like completely unrelated stories, but for me they're very much connected in the way like how governments are thinking and acting right now, and how they are very much using terrorism, drugs, etc., like as a reason to attack a lot of platforms that are very focused on privacy and maybe not the most friendly when it comes to cooperating with governments at all times.
Interesting. I have some more thoughts on this. I think I'm broadly in agreement with what you're saying. Ultimately, this kind of attack on open, I mean, these things are not open tech. That's the thing. Like sometimes they're closed tech, but the point is they are very they're facilitating communication or transactions between large numbers of people, and clearly something is not being done in the way that these governments would like, and they're using the kind of hysteria around fear to try to come to take some type of enforcement action against these particular leaders. I've got some more thoughts on it. Austin, would love to bring your perspective in from like the kind of Latin American perspective, the American perspective. when you hear about this stuff happening in Europe, like, just what's your natural reaction? Like, what's your perspective on this?
So, am I too crazy to think that Elon could get arrested as well? Like, because like if like the classic media and like the establishment is attacking the alternative media or like alternative platforms, like social media platforms, like Telegram in this case, wouldn't be a possibility to like these people go after X and Elon right now, which is one of the most influential individuals right now in the world. Like I think that this like had a negative effect on like crypto and like the token and this token ton. But like I think that, as you said at the beginning of this, like this is not about crypto, this is about the world, and like it's about like a group of people attacking freedom of speech. So like being Elon, one of the top individuals, if not the top one, just like defending the freedom of speech, wouldn't be a possibility for these people to go after him. Basically, I know that he has like he of course like he has the money and the resources, but like this guy also had money and resources as well. Like Telegram is a huge platform, and like it's probably I'm not sure about this, but like probably the second messaging platform in the world. Like it's WhatsApp first, and then it's Telegram, because you know it's decentralized and like all these good things that Telegram has, like in terms of like privacy and everything. So like seeing this, like after seeing this, I can see a possibility of like these people going after Elon. And yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like probably I'm
it's
too
a
crazy to say this, but like
yeah. No, I think a couple of things. I think one of the things I want to take this in a couple of directions. The first thing I'd say is they've already been threatening Elon on the European side. There've been various letters, I think, that the EU Commission have written to Elon saying, like, you need to get Twitter in line with our regulations. Otherwise, we will either try to prevent you from operating over here. And what I've noticed as a consequence, not just of that, but there's been various instances now of this type of sentiment. I'm going to share this on the screen for the people who are watching in. This is from Nick Carter, who said, there's something deeply offensive about European leaders who preside over a decaying continent which produces nothing aside from culture and trinkets of their lost empire, appointing themselves technocrats and imposing their rules on global tech companies built elsewhere. I really hope tech firms pull out of Europe and actually impose some consequences on their leaders for this provocation. It's not just on the freedom of speech side that I've noticed a little bit of, well, on this moderation side. They call it moderation, right? That's the phrasing that they want to see more of on these tech platforms. It's also on the M&A side, right? I think there are different mergers which the EU, under their antitrust laws, will say, like, no, this is just this is too big. You two companies are not allowed to merge with each other. This happened with Figma and Adobe recently. I'm pretty sure they were saying, like, look, you guys are too big. We don't want you to transact. We don't want these two companies to come together. And again, I think there were various voices in the States saying, well, what's going on here? Like, we're the ones, or not exclusively, but like, we're the ones producing the majority of this stuff. We're the ones kind of creating the tech value, or the majority, and then we're getting rules implemented by Europe that are kind of blocking stuff. So, Legendary, I'd be curious to hear your thought on this kind of emerging US versus Europe kind of perspective. What's your thought on that? Something I've been noticing.
Yeah, I very much agree with that perspective, and it's one that makes me very sad because we had obviously Silicon Valley internet and all the culture and tech that has been created around that, and has mainly It's mainly been coming from the United States and from Asia. And in the EU, there's been like so many discussions and conferences and thought think tanks and whatever. What has went wrong, and they at some point realized why none of the tech is coming out of Europe, because companies are not founding in Europe, and if they start in Europe they move to somewhere else if they are working in this domain, because of overregulation and because of all the red tape that is in place. And now basically I see the same pattern repeating with cryptocurrencies. I see the same pattern repeating with AI. And with AI, I think it's going to become something pretty predominant in everyday life, because I think the average person still doesn't give a fuck about blockchain and crypto. But with AI, you can now see it with the Apple iPhone. What is it? iOS 18 coming out, and the iPhone 16 in September. AI features not coming to the EU, not all of them. Same with the new Google Pixel, with Gemini, Google's AI, that has pretty sick AI features, a good part of them not available in the EU. It was the same when Facebook launched their own LLM as well, that it wasn't available in the EU for a good time. ChatGPT has had the similar and same discussions and was banned for a good time in Italy as well. So I think because AI will become like such a big part of everyday tech, and especially of smartphones, and everyone has a smartphone, and I feel like we're pretty aware of what like they can and can't do. This is where, from a customer side, for the first time, you will like be more likely to notice and realize what the result and outcome of this overprotective regulation is, and especially from a continent, or from, it's not the entire continent that's in the EU, but the majority of it, that is not really producing any kind of innovation, but hindering the whole world, or trying to hinder the whole world from it. And this is deeply, deeply saddening if you think about like how high the quality of life, the lifestyle and everything is in Europe, and how like they're like so focused on blocking this way into the future, that it kind of reminds me of the Roman Empire at its peak level of degeneracy, and from where on it only went downhill.
Interesting stuff. I'm actually going to try and think of a way to steelman the other side of this, because I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I'm just going to try and think of the alternative perspectives. I've seen Funky's hands raised, so I would love to throw to him. We've got Sensei on stage as well, and I would love to throw to her after, because I think she's quite uniquely positioned to comment on some of the Telegram stuff. So Funky, your hand is raised first. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on the Telegram news?
GM, everyone. I mean, honestly, I think it's patently absurd that they would even arrest this man for being the owner of the platform. And I think these arguments are spurious at best. They're tremendous overreach when it comes to governmental power. It is, what we're really talking about at the end of the day is privacy, a fundamental human right. This is something that's constantly being brought up nowadays. I mean, what's next? Are they going to arrest the founders of Signal, where everything is end-to-end decrypted and you can't know what's going on that platform? This is just like back in the day when the San Bernardino shooting happened, and the FBI was demanding that Apple put a backdoor into the code so that they could access the iPhone. It's not right. It's not. I understand bad things are going to happen, and maybe I'm getting a little worked up about this, but I also feel like that there still needs to be some separation between this kind of governmental overreach and just everyday human beings trying to interact with each other. The vast majority of people are not doing anything illicit on Telegram, right? I mean, most of us who are listening to this space right now are probably using it for BD, right? Like or many people, right? If you're not in the industry, because people use it just as a regular communication tool with their friends and family, like WhatsApp. I did not understand this. I'm an American. I text people directly on their cell phone, and all my European friends are like, "Why are you texting me? Hit me up on Telegram. Send me a message on WhatsApp." So I just think it's something that's just a crazy amount of overreach, and I completely disagree with what France is doing here.
Strong takes, Funky. Appreciate it. From our stateside reporter. Sensei, definitely want to get your takes on this. I know you're quite uniquely positioned to maybe comment on this from a perspective that we don't have. What are your thoughts, my friend? Nice to have you back up with us. How are you doing?
Yeah, GM everyone. You guys have really been leveling up the show. Congrats on the amazing work.
Thanks.
Yeah, the all the uniqueness of my position is that I'm Russian. Basically, I don't think there's anything else unique about me. But
I didn't want to
that's also
dox you unless you were willing to give that information. So I just said
yeah, I
uniquely
figured.
positioned.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, it's kind of been uncomfortable. I'm kind of surprised by like the amount of hate. Honestly, it's a little unpleasant, but that's also the unique situation about this, and I'm honestly hopeful about that being a factor that helps this not go further, because the entirety of Russian government is like excited about this. They're like,
Interesting.
oh my god, France fucked up, because Durov was in quite a bit of trouble in Russia. Like his previous company basically was muscled away from him for like surveillance reasons, and it's like a Facebook clone. It's a Russian Facebook clone, and it's basically a surveillance machine right now. And they tried to get into Telegram for the longest time, and that was the reason he left Russia essentially. But they never arrested him here. He like walked a free man always, and everyone is now like, "Oh my God, we've never arrested this guy, and France, the fucking land of the free, arrested him. Ha ha ha! Fucking losers." I'm sorry for like making it sound like this. This is a serious matter, but it's bad PR. This looks horrible, So I would be surprised if it ends up with him going to jail. Like, come on, like
Sensei,
you did worse than Russia. Like, come on.
Yeah, can I ask one question though? So my understanding, this is one gap in my understanding which I didn't quite understand. Maybe you'll be able to fill it in. My understanding was like he left Russia explicitly because they were not fans, and he was actually refusing to comply with some of his previous. I think they were making data requests of maybe his previous app, the one that you just mentioned. He refused to comply, and therefore he's left. And I would have thought then that they were like less likely, or they would have been less likely to want to protect him, or less like, because that he's not like a friend of the Russian state in some respect. But is there a reason why they, in this case, they'd be like, no, we want a Russian citizen back? Because he actually went and bought French citizenship, and I believe resides in Dubai potentially. So any info there?
He's definitely not a friend, and actually there's consistent attempts to block Telegram in Russia, but also this is like a very politically advantageous situation. Like, he's still like one of the most successful entrepreneurs to come out of Russia. Like, he is like a globally known entity who's being persecuted for a reason, again, that's globally recognized as pretty preposterous. Like, they're gonna take advantage of this. He's still just like, it's still not a good place for him to be here. Nothing has changed. It's there's still no warm feelings between him and the government, and
Sure.
he's still not going to give up access to Telegram to like the Russian government. Like, it's not that anyone is suddenly friends, but like it would be stupid for them not to take advantage of this, which they're doing.
Okay. Thanks so much. We had our official US correspondent, and Sensei, I believe you are now our official Russian correspondent. So thank you very much for your contributions. Legendary, you wanted to jump in here. Then we've got Jabs on stage, who I believe might be able to offer a bit of a legal perspective. Quick take from you, Legendary, then let's close this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting to see Russian media immediately reported on that. And the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, said that they had immediately requested consular access to Durov from France, and that they sent a note to Paris immediately, and that they're obviously concerned about the observance of Durov's rights. But France, and Paris specifically, has refused any kind of interaction on this issue.
Do you know what it made me think of? That's it. Thanks for that update, and we'll go to Jabs in a second. It made me think of, how sometimes if you might be critical of your own parents or something, and then someone else comes over and says something bad about them, you're like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm allowed to be critical of the person, but you better not say anything about the person. So in a way, it's like, look, Russia may not, they might have a fractious relationship with this entrepreneur, but at the same time, it's like, well, no one else can be rude to him. Like, we want to be rude to him, no one else. That was just, I don't know if that's how real politics works. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But Jabs, your hand is raised. I believe this is your first time with us on stage. We kind of need to wrap this topic, but I want to give you a chance to come in. It says you have some legal perspective here. What are your thoughts?
GM, yeah, thanks for having me up. Love the show. Great work that you guys have been doing. I'll make it short and sweet. I think been watching the issue of privacy from a legal perspective for a bit of time now. This has really not surprised me. It is just a convenient excuse that we are probably just getting the beginnings of it being assessed by courts all over the world. The unfortunate thing is that courts are trying to expand the definitions of certain criminal activity to, as we know from the Alexei Petrov's case, Internet Cash, the Dutch court conveniently expanded the definition, even though they understood that it was a freestanding smart contract. They understood it to a T, but they still expanded the scope of that criminal activity to sentence him. So I wouldn't be too surprised, to be honest, if the same thing happened in Durov's case. It would be sucky that if it does, even with international pressure, but it is going to be something that watching closely from both a legal perspective and I guess a crypto perspective as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised. I'll be honest with you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the kind of legal perspective. For the people who don't know, I mean, most people probably do know by now, but I used to be a practicing lawyer kind of in this space as well. I did the privacy stuff. I did a lot of media litigation. And one of the things that we noticed, and people have probably been tweeting about this a lot in the UK, is that the kind of the UK online safety bill is something that they've been bringing in. That was something I was researching as it was coming into law at the time. This was a few years ago. And kind of as you're alluding to, Jabs, like the expansion of like vague terms which people might be able to be prosecuted under is like really, really alarming. I remember reading this stuff back like 3-4 years ago, looking around my colleagues being like, what is this? Like, seriously, what is this? I mean, look, I understand the intent when someone is trying to crack down on hate speech, for example, but the thing is that's actually become a term now, as if that actually means something definitive. And it's very difficult from a legal perspective. I know that you can go and look up the word hate in the dictionary, but from a legal perspective, to define what hateful content might mean is like, it gets very, very tricky, very, very quickly, because it's so dependent on how people feel and how people perceive the words that you say. That doesn't diminish the feelings that you feel. It just means from a legal perspective, it's very, very difficult to enforce. And whilst we've got 2 minutes left on the show, we can't necessarily go into a greater discussion on that. But Jabs, your hand is raised. I wanted to give you a chance to come back on that.
Appreciate that. Just again, quickly, the similar issue we're likely to see with MiCA in the EU, given that there was so many years of negotiation to end up with a set of regulation around digital assets. There's a lot of vague terminology and clauses in there. So, as I said, this is really just getting started. Privacy, crypto, digital assets generally, the litigation around that is going to happen across all of Europe. And it is going to be around the vagueness that is inherently there. So it's sucky that we don't get something specific, and then actors that are working in the interests of us as a community, as an industry, are giving away. And then the other point is a lot of representative organizations also conveniently will compromise on the privacy perspective when they want other things to go through. They'll say, oh, look, why don't we KYC for safety measures? And let's allow licensing to happen, or things like that, which is convenient at this point in time, but is not a compromise that I personally would want them to be making if they're speaking for the industry as a whole. And I don't think many in the industry support such a compromise.
I appreciate the perspective. Look, we're running out of time here. We know this is like a really important topic. We've kind of gone over on this topic. We haven't done the Web3 roundup. If you need the rest of the roundup of what else has gone on in the space in the last 24 hours, obviously the snapshot is pinned up top if you're listening on stage, and we'll post it in the comments to the YouTube description as well. Maybe a final take on this, boys, is the thing that I'm noticing is this kind of EU versus USA conversation. I don't think people mean it literally as if they are strongly at odds with each other, but just a different way of wanting to deal with the core issue, and the EU seeming to be more and more obstructive. Legendary, do you have a final perspective on this? And then we'll hear from Austin.
Yeah, final perspective is that I am afraid that this conflict will deepen over the next years.
Fair enough. Austin, any final perspective?
Hopefully this do not affect on the evolution of the EU innovation. So, but I just want to see how this goes and how this evolves.
Good stuff. Kind of heavy discussion towards the end. There's some serious stuff we talk about. Yes, we talk about the modern market. We talk about NFTs. We talk about crypto. We talk about how to make some money on the internet. But sometimes some stuff is bigger than that. And this stuff is affecting all of us, given that we are online all the time. We are creating on the time. We're producing on the internet all the time. And so this is very, very important to us. I hope you found today's show helpful, interesting. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time. For 1 hour. We're live on X, we're live on YouTube, and you catch us on Spotify and Apple too. Austin, thanks so much for being our special guest today. How can we keep up with everything that you and SEIng are up to?
I think that following SEIng on Twitter or myself or anything, or like just follow you guys, you'll see what's been going on in the markets and everything, and on SEIng as well. Yeah, just like everything happens on Twitter for us, so that's probably the way to go.
Perfect. Appreciate you, man. Guys, have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.